TikTok, time to rock, everyone.
TikTok.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. It's your friendly neighborhood philosopher here, D. Wood. With me now is the prophet of all apostates everywhere,
Albert
AP.
Paul.
Albert Paul! Hey, AP.
Yes.
You heard of this Douglas Murray guy?
I heard of him.
What have you made of the last 3 weeks?
Well, I suppose like all of us, it's a mixture of things. First shock, then horror, then shock again, then horror, then disappointment, and then rage, probably, in roughly that order. Horror at what happened in Israel, shock like everyone, this was able to happen. Horror at the details of what happened, shock then at the response on the streets of cities like the one we're sitting in London. The fact that there were so many people who didn't even give it a day before they turned out on the streets of my city.
Sounds about right.
Supporting the people who'd done this act of terror.
Yeah, that was, gosh, I should have pulled up some of the clips of all the people celebrating. Guys, keep in mind, it's, you saw the rallies afterwards that were all the, free Palestine and from the river to the sea and so on. But there were all those celebrations that were just responses to terrorist attack. Once news came out that men, women, and children had all been massacred and families had been massacred and all this information came out and there were just absolute celebrations and so on. So very, very creepy stuff. And of course, he's in the UK, so he's sitting there watching the celebrations. Pretty fun to do.
I think the thing that we've all had to come to terms with is how some people have just been so open about supporting an extremist Islamist terrorist group and also refusing to acknowledge it as such.
Well, before you answer, Douglas, one of the things that I've noticed in comments is people like, well, these are pro-Palestine marches. And I think we have to be clear that what we're talking about is in the first 2 days prior to Israel responding in any way, there were people celebrating.
Yeah, the bodies of the dead hadn't even been found. They were still warm in some cases. Some people were still in the process of being massacred. And even as that was still going on, people were already out in the streets of cities like London, protesting against Israel. And that was what it was. Could claim that the people who've come out in recent weekends on the Saturdays care about Palestinian lives. I don't think they do.
I don't either.
I just don't think they do. And I'll tell you one reason why, is that nobody in the Middle East, apart from the Israelis, cares about the Palestinians a jot.
Yeah, have you noticed that? I mean, no one wants them. I mean, it really makes sense. Even if you're part of the group that says the Palestinians need to stay where they are and continue the fight until eventually Israel is conquered or something. Even if you're part of that group, it really makes sense to say, okay, at least get all the women and children out of there. Let them cross the border. Let them cross, because keep in mind, Gaza shares a border with Egypt. They could cross that. They could cross that border. Egypt won't let them. Hamas won't let them. And so why are the women and children there? Because everyone is keeping them there. And these are the same people who claim to really care about Palestinians. Won't take in the women and children. Definitely won't take in, refugees and so on. So I don't know.
Yeah, they don't want to save those people because they need to. They need them to continue the whole religious and territorial conflict. The Palestinians are just where they need to be, according to the Middle Eastern nations and Muslim nations. So, no, they don't care about the lives.
Yeah, so guys, notice, I mean, again, even for people who say, hey, we're not going, hey, they don't need to go anywhere and so on. I mean, look at Ukraine. In areas where things are going to get bombed, the tendency is to get women and children out of there, even out of the country. And so they go to, different countries and so on to wait out to see how things go and so on. No one wants to touch the Palestinians. No one wants them, but they're claiming to care about them. It's wild stuff.
I've traveled around the region. I've spoken to enough people, including leaders of other countries in the region, to know the Jordanians do not like the Palestinians at all. They find them an unbelievable encumbrance, and that's why they haven't opened their borders to the people in the West Bank who should effectively be in Jordan. The Egyptians loathe the Palestinians. The authorities are keeping the border between Egypt and Gaza closed because they hate the Palestinians. I know people who were born in Gaza when Gaza was owned by Egypt. If Egypt wanted to solve the Gaza problem, it could do so tomorrow by taking control of Gaza or allowing the people of Gaza to go into Egypt, where they should be.
Important point. There are all these solutions out there to all these problems, and like to end the problem instantly, no one wants to do it. No one wants to do anything that actually ends the problem. And then so you've got Israel saying, "Okay, we're going to do our best to end the problem, since no one else will end it in a way that would work, given what they say their goals are." But they never actually do anything.
Here's the thing: the justification when you tell them about this, or when you bring this up, the justification is that if they accept those refugees and if they take them into their countries and let them live there, then Israel will use this as an opportunity to permanently seize the land and never let them come back. That's what they, that's the argument that they often present, and they base that on the displacement, much of the fleeing and some of the expulsion that happened in the past as a result of Arab aggression wars. But again, I mean, you could do all kinds of different arrangements, agreements to get around that. You could at least, in the end, care about the lives and say, it doesn't matter. Let's just save these people. But no, it's just always about the territory. It means something to the Arabs and the Muslims. They don't want to live there themselves, but they want to keep those Palestinians there, whom they also don't want to accept because they cause trouble. I mean, Egypt has a history with this. Egypt, there was a time where Egypt opened the border and had Palestinians in a region where they then ended up causing chaos and killing Egyptian security officers. And Jordan had big trouble with them. They created terrorist organizations there. In Lebanon, the Palestinians went there and started terrorist activities and dragged Lebanon into the war again. So people don't want to accept them. They don't like them. They don't want to accept them for geopolitical reasons, for religious reasons. It's a giant mess. But the thing is, nobody really cares about the lives here.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it, right? It's very easy for people to just recognize, okay, you're not going to actually conquer Israel. That's a fantasy, and therefore we just need to do something with these people. Gaza is like the size of, I think it's like the size of Philadelphia. You've got 49 Muslim majority countries. You have a lot. I understand Jordan not wanting to take in refugees. They've already had a bunch. I understand Syria not wanting to take in refugees. They've got a bunch. You have a ton of Muslim countries with a ton of land and a ton of oil that could easily take in a bunch of refugees. Don't want them. They don't want one.
Nobody really cares about the Palestinians, and frankly, the idea that Muslims care about their brother Muslims is absolute rubbish. I think we've flattered much of the so-called Muslim street by even pretending this in recent years.
Yeah, and we've brought this up repeatedly that if it's Muslims killing Muslims, they don't raise a peep out of it unless you're Shia and it's Sunnis killing Shias, or you're Sunni and Shias kill some Sunnis. Even then, you don't hear anywhere near the rage that you do with something like this. But guys, there's been a war going on. There was a war going on for years where Saudi Arabia and the UAE are bombing even civilian targets in Yemen. I mean, they were bombing weddings and so on, taking people out. You didn't hear a peep about this. You definitely didn't see these college campus protests and so on. Suddenly, the moment Jews get involved, then it's a really big issue. And everyone needs to really care. And it's because we care about the Palestinians so much. Wait, you could solve that entire problem right now. Muslim countries could solve the entire problem right now and take in the Palestinian population. Do you care about them? Yes, we care about them, but no, that's not an option. What about all these other Muslims who are being slaughtered by their fellow Muslims? No, we don't care about that stuff. What about the Uyghurs? Yeah, we kind of, we'll say something in front of an embassy if we don't have anything else to do. But yeah, we're not really enraged against China because we know it's not going to work against China. We know the complaints aren't going to work against China. But with Israel, Yeah, there we go. There's our victim status right there. Way more Muslims are dying from other things, and no one cares at all.
The issue is nothing brings Muslims together quicker than hating Jews. I'm sorry to say this, but this is just it's just in the Muslim world it's just extremely popular to hate Jews, and if the opponents are other Muslims, then they feel sad about it for a little bit, and then it's all over. But if the opponents are Jews, then this is like all Muslims have to come together. This is the eternal enemy here. Everybody has to hate them, and everybody will feel very united in hating them because it's so much fun.
And it reminds me of like Black Lives Matter in the U.S. Whereas, if you're thinking of it, however you're thinking of that, if you're thinking of it in terms of police who are sometimes scumbags and will not hesitate to shoot, be a little trigger happy and kill people or things like that, then you think, okay, yeah, this is important. But when anyone who's not a cop is killing black people, it's completely irrelevant. And it gets brought up to Black Lives Matter organization. How come you don't care about all these people who are just like slaughtering each other in Chicago? What's that? And they say, no. Black Lives Matter is specifically addressed towards what police are doing and so on. And so what you see is like, 1,000 black people could all die in, gun violence and so on in Chicago. There wouldn't be a word about it. But if one police officer killed one black man, it would be, there could be riots in the streets over it. And anyway, that just reminds me of that same idea where you become fixated on one particular person as an oppressor. And unless that person or that group that you've designated the oppressor is doing it, it doesn't really matter.
Hundreds of thousands of Muslims have been killed in Yemen in the last few years, and there hasn't been a protest 1% of the size of what we've seen in recent days and weeks in the West. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims have been killed in Syria in the last over a decade, since the civil war in Syria, by Assad, by the Assad regime, by rival jihadist groups, by intra-religious sects, and much more. And we haven't seen 1% of the people who turned out on the streets this day. The idea that Muslims actually care about their fellow Muslims is insane. They don't. What they care about is Jews.
Ouch. Oh, that's good. And by the way, just going in a different direction, there is always this thing with, remember Muhammad Hijab and for us, life begins at death, or whatever he was saying. And there's a common saying, we love death more than you love life.
Yeah.
And so we love death. We think death is great. We think getting killed by the enemies of Allah is great. That's martyrdom. That's the greatest thing that can happen. Oh, we're victims here. It's like, wait a minute. You're the ones who say you love being killed and it's everything you want in life, and you love death. You love death. You love death. Until it's just convenient to say, oh, look, we're being killed. We're victims here. We hate death. We don't want to die. Anyway.
Yeah.
Powerful.
There is something at the very root of Islam and followers of the Muslim religion.
Where?
Who cannot bear any war in which Israel is fighting, and most of all loathes any war in which Israel is winning.
He's zeroed in right on that guy. Guys, that is the real factor here. That is the real obsession. They can't stand the idea of Jews winning something against Muslims. They can't take it. They can't take it, and that's the real heart of this problem here.
It's insane to me that he is one of the only few people who actually point out this very big elephant in the room, which is at the core of this whole conflict. So many people just don't want to talk about it or don't see it, but although it's very obvious, and I'm so happy that he won't shy away from talking directly about it.
Mr. Archer here says that people can't understand that human shields don't grant you immunity from a conflict you started boggles my mind. They would kill the shield in a heartbeat if their family was being slaughtered. Yeah, and generally in a war, you don't want to do that. If you're a soldier, you don't want to go run and hide behind people. That's bad. That's cowardly.
What? Why?
But
what
it's
Hamas does all the time.
exactly what they do. Yeah, and this is popular, and their own people don't call them out for it. Of course they're going to hide behind women and children. What else are they supposed to do? Fight like men? Ah! You know what you're actually supposed to do? Surrender. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yes.
Surrender. But yes, this is about to be brought up, Mr. Archer.
You can see it. It's at the absolute core of their being. This is why they are on the streets of this city and others marching. It's not because they love fellow Muslims, it's because they hate Jews.
What? So you're saying there's something at the root of the religion. Well, let's tease that apart. What do you mean by that?
Well, there's two particular...
What are you talking about?
It's funny because I know Constantine and Francis, they both are aware of that, and they both don't like Islam very much. But yeah, so it's nice that they go there.
What are you thinking? Are you thinking of things like it was narrated that Abu Huraira said, the Messenger of Allah said, the hour will not begin until the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Muslims will kill them until a Jew hides behind a rock or a tree, and the rock or tree will say, oh, Muslim, oh, slave of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. What could this have to do with anything? Yeah,
Well, that can't be it. No.
Yeah, so he's not acting like there's not. He's just giving Douglas a lead in. Like, hey, Douglas, well, are you saying what could you be referring to here? Oh, here we go.
Things worth mentioning. One is, of course, that Muhammad, the founder of Islam, himself beheaded, massacred many, many Jews. Famously, there's one battle in particular, and the Banu Quraysh. It's a story you can find in the...
Ooh, he said Banu Quraysh, wrong tribe.
Oh no,
It's
he doesn't know.
Kurayza.
in the Quran and the Hadith. Of course, this is because the Jews would not accept the revelation of Muhammad, such as it was. And
It's interesting there that he says the reason was that they wouldn't accept the revelation of Muhammad, and they were conspiring with the Meccans against Muhammad. But notice, the real reason Muhammad was mad at the Jews was because they rejected him. That is he's absolutely correct. That is the real cause of everything. Everything else that happened was just looking for a justification to either exterminate or at least expel the Jews, because they were the ones who were exposing him as a false prophet. He's saying he spent 12 years in Mecca saying the Jews are going to confirm me. The Jews, they know their scriptures. The Jews are going to tell you their scriptures prophecy about me. They're going to be on my side. He goes up there. What? Who are you? You loser! Get out of here! And then he was just enraged at them.
Yeah,
It's
very nice that Douglas Murray doesn't even entertain their explanation of it. He just
gives the real and correct, absolutely correct reason.
they were seen within Islamic tradition as being one of the first people who turned down the opportunity to join Islam. And as a result, of course, Muhammad decapitated hundreds and hundreds of Jews. So that's not a good start. But there's a bigger thing, I think, within the Muslim world, which is worth mentioning, which the late Bernard Lewis pointed out on a number of occasions, which is the great problem within Islam when it comes to not just Judaism, but the wider non-Islamic world, is that the Muslim religion claims to be the last revelation from God to man, which, as we all know, is a very large claim to make.
He's zeroing in on another really important feature that's behind all these conflicts, that hey, we've got the last and final revelation. He doesn't bring this up, but we're the best of peoples, you're all the worst of creatures. We're supposed to dominate you all. That's the way it is. But he's about to go into something I've pointed out here, and it's very very important for everyone to understand the psychology of what's going on here. But check this out.
There have been previous revelations, but this is the last and final one. And what's more, God has given you a book, the Quran. And the Quran is the one book you need. The opening, here is the book wherein is no doubt, which is quite a bold claim as well, I'd say.
Wherein is no doubt.
No doubt. The claim at the foundation of Islam is, here is the book wherein is no doubt, and it's the only book you need. And it's the final word from God that man will ever have. Now, if you are the recipients of this book, the people who end up either converting or being forced to convert to Islam, and eventually the areas that Islam takes over by force, if you are somebody who's brought up in that tradition, you would think that being the recipient of the final revelation from God, you would be in a just tip top situation.
Are you getting this? This is awesome, right? He's going into the psychology, right? Like, hey, again, he doesn't bring up best of peoples and so on, but that's the idea. We're the special people. We've got the book. Everyone else, they've got stuff that's now outdated. We're the basically, God's chosen people for dominating and subjugating the entire world. We've got this book that is the absolute book of all books. We've got it. And what's wrong? What's going to be wrong with all this? What's going to bother you? The fact that everyone else seems to have a massive advantage over you in technology and money, everything else, right? Anyway.
You would imagine that, well, this is going very well. We've got the final revelation from God. What's not to like? What's not on our side? And then several things happen in the millennia since, which is, first of all, many, many Muslims realize that despite having the final revelation from God, things don't seem to be going very well.
Yeah, they sure
Until
don't.
oil is discovered in certain parts of the Middle East, most people live in total destitution.
The people point out you have nice areas now. That's just because they're sitting on a massive sea of oil. If it's not for that is not a place anyone wants to live. That is not. I mean, I wouldn't want. Most people wouldn't want to live there now, even with the nice places, unless you're like Andrew Tate and you're just looking for a place to flee your crimes and so on. But not the sort of place anyone wants to live. And is this the way it's supposed to be here? No, we're supposed to be the greatest land, the greatest people. Everything is supposed to be great about us. And it's almost like our book is holding us back. That's weird.
Nevertheless, in the main, the Muslim world cut itself off from the rest of the world and didn't care to learn from the rest of the world, didn't improve the economic conditions of its people, totally failed to create societies anything like as successful as, for instance, European societies.
And by the way, Pete, I mean, we've talked about this many, many times before, but I mean, to this day, even now that they're drenched in oil, where do Muslims want to move to? They all want to move to the West. Like every country, they want to move to the West. And so even post finding seas of oil and being extremely rich, they want to get out of there and come to a different country. Among the kuffar. They'd rather live among the kuffar. And all these Dawa guys, where do they want to live? Among the kuffar. They like it better than Sharia. And then they come over here.
I don't know if that's true. I feel like many of them want to go to the Muslim world, right? They're all begging to go there, and people from the West, they're also flooding to the East.
Yep. People just can't find plane tickets.
Yeah.
And therein a question arises, which is, if we are the recipients of the final revelation, why is everything so awful where we live?
Why is everything
And
suck?
then you have
Why does everything suck when everything is if think about this, guys. If our religion is true, why does everything suck? If our religion is true, everything should be awesome. But everything isn't awesome. Everything sucks. Therefore religion's not true.
Easy, but they couldn't figure that out.
the additional thing, which is, and how come the Jews return or re-establish of course, many Jews are already living in the area that's now Israel, but already lived there, but many others come from other parts of the world, including from the Middle Eastern countries where they're chucked out by the governments in 48 and so on. The Muslim world sees this tiny, tiny bit of land, which, among other things, is the only bit of the Middle East that doesn't have any oil.
But by the way, I mean, I want to watch this like 10 times. The point he's making here. We've got all this land, and then we end up with all this oil. It still sucks. No one wants to live there. The Jews have this tiny spot, which is the only place that doesn't have the oil, and they're about to turn it into the most advanced place there is there. And it just enrages them. Why is that one group able to do way more with one little spot than we can do with all our spots?
That is true. Israel is insanely advanced compared to the rest of the Middle East. Is making insane contributions to the world, to science, to innovation, to defense systems, computer systems, and so on, compared to the Middle East. The Middle East is the oil nations are now rich because of the oil, but they're not working. They're not producing anything. whereas Israel is there on its own, surpassing all of them by far, and that's harsh.
The Muslim world sees this tiny, tiny bit of land. This tiny bit of land, which, among other things, is the only bit of the Middle East that doesn't have any oil.
It's like the worst. It seems like the worst spot as far as if you want to build up. If you want to build up, you definitely want to be in the one of the spots that has, rivers of oil flowing beneath you. You get the one spot that doesn't have anything like that. I mean, think about this. They have, what are they? I mean, Israel. They've got one river, and it is. We wouldn't even, in West Virginia, we would not call it a river. We'd call it a creek, or to be more accurate, a crick. But everyone else would call it, would be familiar with creek. We would call it a creek. That's the Jordan River. They have one lake, the Sea of Galilee, which they call a sea, but a lake. It's a big lake. So they've got a lake and a creek, and then they've got the Dead Sea. And that's what you've got. That's your resources. And they turn it into a modern, massively developed nation.
And they make of it a much more successful country than any of the countries around. Now, if you create a Palestinian state, you just have another failed Arab state, another failed Muslim state to add to the more than 50 already failed Muslim and Arab states.
Yes.
I mean, and here again, the whole conflict is a perfect example of that. If they weren't being incredibly stupid, they would have their own state, right? The Palestinians would have their own state if they didn't keep screwing it up. And so they can't even get a state to screw up because they keep screwing up even their efforts to get the state to begin with. It's like they can't get it right. Guys, I mean, think about this. You've got the land, the British Mandate of Palestine. Like, oh, okay, we're going to divide this up. And then you end up with a bunch of hellholes and then Israel. And I don't know what to do, but you can see like the psychological problem that this would cause. These Jews seem really good at building a place where people can live, and we just suck at it.
What is the explanation that Jews who refused the Prophet's invitation to Islam are still here, have this tiny bit of land, and make all of these discoveries and other things that show themselves to be so successful? It's some kind of stab in the heart. And instead of saying, we're doing this wrong, the thing is, the Jews are doing something right, and that must mean that they've rigged the game.
Isn't this brilliant, man?
But principally anti-Semitism in our own day of the kind that we hoped had ended with Hitler exists and indeed thrives in the Muslim world. And the Muslim world is now in our world in Europe, and so we have the Hitlerian horrors of anti-Semitism back.
Well, I have no doubt.
Isn't it interesting though? Like he pulls it all together and shows you what's really going on and the psychology of it all. But I mean, I actually think this is tied into the grooming gangs in the UK, in the sense that from an Islamic perspective, we're supposed to be dominant and powerful and in control of the rest of you. And in reality, we're coming to you begging to give us a place to live, to get out of the Sharia compliant hellholes that we come from. Can we please come and live in your countries that are obviously far better developed and they're so much better than our countries that we can't stand the idea of living there. Then we want to come there and then advocate all the same views and policies that led to the Sharia compliant hellholes that we wanted to get out of. And we want the same rules here. But they look around and it's like, hey, look at the world. Everyone else is more powerful than us, and everyone else is more developed than us. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. And they kind of lash out in rage. And I will show you how you're supposed to be treated. And how you're supposed to be treated is, we're going to just treat you like garbage and treat you like our sex slaves and drug you and rape you and gang rape you and all these things. And it's a similar mindset as far as the stuff that Douglas Murray's talking about, is that psychologically as far as the way my book tells me the world is supposed to be, I'm supposed to be controlling the rest of you by now. I'm supposed to be the most developed. We're supposed to have everything. You're all supposed to be servants. And the entire situation is reversed. So we're going to do everything we can to whine and complain to be victims, because it must be that you're oppressors and we're victims. That's the only way to explain the massive failures in our lands, in our country. It's got to be you. It can't be us and our book and our stupid fake prophet. Can't be that. Yeah. So we're going to unload our rage on the Jews. We're going to go after little girls, everything we need to do, terrorist attacks, everything. It's all a big temper tantrum. For this isn't the way things are supposed to be. These are like kids screaming, rolling around on the floor of the checkout aisle at Walmart because mommy won't buy them some Skittles. Basma says, hi, AP and D Wood, Egyptian here. Egypt is surrounded with issues in surrounding countries. Our government is so proud about keeping us safe, but literally everything else is censored. Sending love. Yeah. Kind of more confirmation of what Douglas Murray is saying. No, because guys, think about this, right? You've got Israel right there. It has no natural resource. It has nothing. It doesn't have anywhere near the kinds of resources that a bunch of other places in the Middle East have. You've got Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Iraq. And I mean, some of these places were like massive civilizations, like the dominant civilizations in the world a long, long time before Muhammad, right? So it's not like it's not like you don't have the building blocks there. You could build something. How are you not building a great civilization? You've had 14 centuries to do it. You end up with a bunch of Sharia compliant hellholes. How are you not doing something? How are you not doing something there? And then you think, oh, okay, maybe it's just the entire region is so screwed up that we can't do anything here. And Israel goes there and we build it up in a couple decades into one of the most successful countries in the world. What is your problem? They're getting Nobel Prizes left and right for all their developments and so on. They're exporting water to the rest of the Middle East because they're purifying it there. Even though they don't have a great source for all this water, they purify it. They take it out of the Mediterranean Sea. They recycle the water that's being used by people, and they're exporting it to other people. At what point do you start realizing maybe everyone else isn't the problem? Maybe everyone else isn't the problem here.
The reason why the young people you talk about believe this is because they have been fed a form of indoctrination, a particular version of history, which effectively, as you both know, maps on a very specific and perverted version of American racial history and maps it onto absolutely everything in the rest of the world. Add to that a particular form of anti-colonial history, post-colonial history, whatever you want to call it, which knows nothing of colonialism, but knows only about the post-colonial world. And you also see that is mapped onto the Middle East. So these people...
Okay, so here he's saying he gave the reasons for Muslims being enraged at Jews. And so the question is, why are other people enraged about Jews, specifically in this conflict? And why are they siding with the Palestinians over Israel? And he's saying that other people are taking what they're familiar with. And so they're familiar with various oppressors in the past and their own nations oppressing other nations in the past and so on, and certain groups oppressing other groups and so on. And they're mapping that onto what's going on there. So Israel's the oppressor and the Palestinians are like the oppressed groups that we're familiar with in the past. Yeah. And so, hey, we condemn the oppressions of the past, so therefore we got to condemn these guys too. What he brought up there, as far as people not knowing about history anymore, saying people are knowing less and less about history. I mean, think about this: you could solve a lot of the issues. You're not really. I mean, it's not going to solve them and so on, but it's going to help people understand if it was just standard in schools to teach the very basics about like the formation of Israel and the background of it. Like how is that not standard, something that people are learning in schools or in college, just a little bit about that? Like, guys, here's what actually happened, so that when someone comes in with the myth, oh yeah, you had the Palestinian people and they were there forever, and then the Jews came in and took their land, and now they're fighting to get their land back. I mean, how is it off? How is it impossible to just give people the basics? Sid here says Muslim excuses are that the Mongols sacked Baghdad in 1258 and they lost all their scientific works. Lol, China, Russia, Korea were all ruled by Mongols and they all do fine. Can't accept their values are inferior. Yeah, and that's important. I mean, think Europe. I mean, Europe got destroyed by the bubonic plague. They lost like a third of their population.
Yeah.
And then they get the Renaissance right after that. I mean, the scientific revolution, right? They didn't stop. It didn't stop them. Germany gets bombed down to nothing. I mean, Germany got the crap bombed out of it, got invaded, got divided up, was controlled by other nations. They now have the world's 4th largest economy. Japan lost the war. Nuclear bombs were dropped on them. And now they have the 3rd largest economy in the world after the US and China. Like what Muslims, what is your excuse? Oh, but this thing happened to us 1,000 years ago. That's why we can't. I don't know, man. It's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic.
Those things also happened to Europe, by the way. They didn't just affect the Muslim world at the same time.
Yep. All right, back to Douglas.
People talk in what terms? They basically fall into 2 groups. They talk in terms of occupation, colonizers, apartheid. This is the Americanized racial justice version of this mapped onto the Middle East. That the Israelis are colonizers, for instance, and that they're indigenous peoples, and that the Palestinians are indigenous peoples, despite there being Jews in the land many years before anyone even came up with the term Palestinian, which is a disputed term anyway.
See how much this guy knows?
So they come up with this idea, for instance, that they're indigenous people who were moved out. The Palestinians are indigenous people, and they were moved out by the Jews, the Israelis, the Zionists. And this version is, of course, a replay of that version of American history, which is there were the Edenic first populations of America, the indigenous peoples, and then people from Europe came, the wicked Spanish and Italians and Portuguese and the French and even the British.
So just to be clear, everyone, because again, I know some people tune in the middle rather than at the beginning, but he went through the Islamic mindset and why there's this rage against Israel. And then the question that was brought up, why are other people like college students enraged there? And he's saying they're seeing it through a certain lens. They're comparing it to, okay, you had Native Americans, and then a bunch of people came over there and pushed them off their land and so on. And they're thinking of the Jews as like that. They're thinking of the Israelis like that, and the Palestinians are like the Native Americans, and they're pushed off their lands and so on. So they're seeing it through that lens, and that's why they're siding with the oppressed. Of course, it's total nonsense. That has nothing to do with what actually happened. They don't know their history. They don't know it enough. And it's basically the situation is you have people who hate the Jews for the Islamic reasons, but they can use that filter, that lens, to get other people on their side. And so, yeah, the Muslims who are going to the rally won't say, hey, yes, our prophet wants us to exterminate Jews. They'll say, you're all against oppressors, right? Well, the Jews are the oppressors there, so you're on our side.
Come and do their thing. And so they just put this version of history onto the Middle East. To those people, I would say, fine, you can do that if you want. Now let's do Britain.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's talking about the people who are now moving to Britain. Okay, so they're coming to someone else's land. We've got the natives in Britain. We got these other people who are coming along. Can we say the same thing there?
Yeah, we should.
Want to play that game? You sure?
Yeah, sure.
You better not get the British started.
Okay, so we got the indigenous peoples here in Britain, and we got all these people moving in. I thought the people who are moving in on the indigenous peoples are the bad guys, and that's not the case here. Interesting.
Okay, people who've been here the longest. Who are the settlers? Who are the illegal settlers in Britain? Oh, well, that would be the people who've arrived. Does anyone want to go there?
Well,
it's funny. It's like so simple, right? Okay, here's your rule over here. Okay, Exact same rule over here. Now what? Oh, you don't want to do that. Okay, so you don't actually believe in the rule? Do you guys actually believe in anything? It's like you'll take the Jews and then you'll make up all these rules for the Jews just to get people enraged about the Jews. But you don't believe in anything you're saying. You don't believe in any of the moral principles you're saying. You don't believe in defending any of the groups you're actually saying that you want to defend. You don't believe in any of the principles you're claiming. You don't believe in anything you're actually saying. It's all just whatever is convenient at the moment for attacking Jews. That's what you cling to. And you don't believe a word of it in any other context.
The point I'm trying to make to you is we have a narrative in this country, certainly the native population, or certainly the longest living here native population, they are the oppressors. And you know that all of this is about this oppress dynamic. So your argument in their world doesn't work.
Well, the girls in Rotherham and everywhere else in Britain who were raped by the thousands by Pakistani rape gangs in the last 20 years were not the oppressors, were they?
Yeah, it's the white people who are automatically the oppressors and the brown people who are automatically the oppressed. Okay, well, what about these guys drugging, raping, gang raping, pimping, these 12 and 13-year-old girls? Who are the oppressors there? Oh, the little girls. Gotta be.
I would say that they were the oppressed. But let me return to the second class of person who is of the left, of the kind that I was mentioning, who the second class of critic of Israel. And we learn a lot from this. What are the other accusations that they put, apart from the Americanized social justice versions? What are the other versions of this that they put on it? They say the Israelis are committing genocide, that the Israelis are like the Nazis, that the Israelis were as bad as Hitler.
Oh, so yeah, the first part of his response. So he talked about, gosh, this guy's smart. He breaks down the Islamic mindset towards the Jews, and he's got the foundation that goes back to Muhammad. They rejected Muhammad. He put him out of the land, and then in the world today, they're like a constant reminder of that there's some sort of problem within Islam, and so there's this kind of rage against the Jews for being a constant reminder that there's this problem within Islam. And then so the question was, what about other people who have a problem with Israel? And then he gave the U.S. perspective, which they're seeing it through the lens of like, again, Native Americans being oppressed by other people. And so they're thinking of Israel like that. And now he's talking about the European perspective. They're thinking like the worst thing is Hitler and Nazis, and he's saying in the European mindset, that's how they're portrayed, that the Jews are like the Nazis, and it's brilliant stuff, man. Now he's breaking down everyone's different perspective, and it's exactly what you see going on. It's exactly what you see going on, depending on which group you're interacting with. Wild stuff here.
Now, what is this? First of all, we have to hit on the head the idea that the Israelis are committing genocide, which is rife out there. It would be the only genocide in history in which the population massively expanded during said alleged genocide. Yeah. The population of Gaza has shot up in the last 18 years since Israel withdrew.
Yeah, I wish I'd brought up a chart, but you've seen that, right? So notice, guys, if you look at statistics on the Jewish population of Europe during the Holocaust, it plummets because that's what happens during a genocide, right? The population plummets because you're being genocided. That's what happens during genocides. You look at the population of Gaza, it's skyrocketing. How has the population been skyrocketing for decades while they're being genocided? Are you just saying the Jews are the absolute worst at genocide ever? What are they genociding them with? Fertilizer? What are they doing? Anyway.
Also,
what's in the bombs? What's in the bombs? Fertilizer? I don't know.
If it's a racial thing, it's also Israel has an area population of 20%, and their growth rate is higher than the Jewish population in Israel.
Which is pretty amazing considering it's a genocide. It's the midst of a genocide. Guys, that's what... Okay, guys, look at... I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm guessing, I'm predicting, because it was a genocide, that if you look up the Armenian genocide, if you were actually able to find the numbers, I bet the population went way, way down because it was a genocide. Tons of people were being killed. They were being exterminated. That's what happens in a genocide.
What are you talking about, David? If it's a genocide, that means a population booms.
That's what happens. It means you put Miracle Grow on everyone and they all just multiply.
It's unwanted growth. That's what genocide means.
This is what I mean. They keep asking them questions, but it keeps going right to the heart of that. Wait, okay, you're saying is this genocide? Is this genocide here? Okay, how is this the only genocide where the population is skyrocketing?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe because it doesn't sound like a genocide? Okay.
You could say that they are extremely unsuccessful genocidists. Or people who would like to commit genocide but haven't managed to for some reason.
They're really
But
bad
none
at
of the analysis of what is actually happening, and I and anyone else who has traveled through the region widely can tell you this. It is nothing like, for instance, what Bashar al-Assad has done to the Syrian people over the last 13 years. It's nothing like what has been happening in Yemen in the last decade. It is not anything approaching a genocide that is happening in the West Bank or Gaza. So why do they say it?
I can think of a reason why they'd say that to Jews.
Second, why do they say like Hitler? Third,
Wonder
why do they say like the Nazis?
Uh-huh.
These young people have been brought up with only one bit of knowledge from history, which is Nazis. And if you only know about one thing from history, it's like...
Guys.
Again, like people speak in a condescending fashion just to, make themselves sound more important. It's like entirely warranted right here. They only know one thing from history. They know one thing. They know Nazis. You ask 1,000 of these college students, tell us anything you know from history. Hitler.
These young people are throwing out the only nasty accusation they know, and they are picking it up from people who are handing them the nastiest thing that they could say. Why do I say that? They are picking up from mainly Muslim pro-Palestinian voices and pro-Hamas voices and others, these allegations which come from the Muslim world against the Jewish state because the Muslim world knows how much it will wound the Jews. That's why they say that. They say, the Jews are just like the Nazis because they know how much that would hurt any Jew.
Oh, yes.
Now, these young people who pick up these arguments, knowingly or otherwise, are repeating this slur on the Jewish people. And some of them will know how much that hurts the Jews and will not mind. Some of them may not know how much that hurts the Jewish people. Why do these so-called pro-Palestinian peoples keep saying that it's just like the Warsaw Ghetto in Gaza? Why choose the Warsaw Ghetto? Why not choose something not involving Jews?
Yeah, notice, comparing Gaza to the Warsaw Ghetto. He's making a good point here again. Why are you comparing it to that? There are all sorts of things you can compare it to. There's all sorts of things. Why are you picking that? Just because that's a really, really sensitive spot for Jews. And he talk about Hitler. But notice, it's ridiculous. You're talking, the millions of Jews were killed. They're tossed into ovens. They're gassed and so on. You're saying, Gaza's like that. So that's what you guys are doing to Gaza. Yeah. Stupid.
Not choose anything else from the history of the world. First of all, by the way, it's not a very good comparison, is it? Because when people managed to escape briefly from the Warsaw Ghetto, their first thing was not to run out and behead the first child they could find.
Yeah.
But park that for a moment. Why do they choose the Warsaw Ghetto? Because they want to hurt Jews. They want to hurt them as deeply as they can. Here's the other thing. If you have this great mistake of thinking that the whole world can be divided into Hitler and not Hitler, these kids, and kids they are going to discover, if they have their way, that they were Hitler. Why do I say that?
Ouch.
Because if their chant came true, and from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea, Palestine, which is to say a state which is Judenrein, because Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, as well as Hamas, who of course have been running, if you can call it that, the Gaza for the last 13 years, since they killed the Palestinian Authority representatives in Gaza. Both Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the allegedly moderate PA, and Hamas both agree that Palestine must be Jew-free.
Yeah. Everyone following this? He's saying all these stupid idiot students are screaming from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And you say, hey, what are you guys talking about? And they're saying, the Jews are basically the Nazis, and Gaza is like the Warsaw Ghetto here. And so everything for us is Nazi or not Nazi. It's all Hitler or not Hitler. And we're saying that the Jews are Hitler and that the Palestinians are not Hitler. So, and then we say, okay, what are you actually saying? What are you actually advocating for? Oh yeah, wiping Israel off the map. Okay, so who are the Nazis here? That's you, dummy. That's you. You're the one who's arguing to exterminate Jews. You're the Nazis here. Are you stupid?
Yeah. Yeah.
How stupid can you possibly be? Well,
not very smart.
Super, super, super smart.
Stupid.
Cheryl says, can we say anti-Semitic racists? Anti-Semitic is a badge of honor to them, but anti-Semitic racists may make their heads explode. Yeah, so the point here is when you say anti-Semitic, it's no longer bothering them. So start saying anti-Semitic racists. And that might actually.
I often use Jew hater instead of anti-Semitic, which I think sounds like a harsher label.
There is no scenario in the heads of the Palestinian Authority or of Hamas in which one Jew is allowed to live in the Palestinian state. So if from the river to the sea a Palestinian state is created, it will mean either the eradication of all Jews in Israel or the displacement of all Jews in Israel, which means carting out every Jew from their historic homeland and either killing them or sending them somewhere else. And that would be done in the name of being anti-Nazi. These people have a huge problem coming their way if they get their way.
Yeah.
They're ignorant as hell, and they will have to hope to God that they never get what they say they want.
Isn't that interesting? Like, these guys are saying, here's what we want from the river to the sea. And it's a bunch of stupid college students. Hey, we want them. What does that mean? It means Israel has to be wiped off the map. Oh, okay. Suppose you actually get your way. Which side were you on? The Nazi side or the non-Nazi side? And they would go down in history as the morons who wiped out the Jews like Hitler. Weird.
What has struck me is I don't understand the double standards that seem to apply to Israel. I'd never really paid attention to, and therefore I haven't. But I don't understand. I mean, we're talking now about proportionality.
Yeah, someone brought this up in the chat. Very. Let's destroy this. Yeah, let's watch this and let's destroy this. You know what he's talking about, right? This proportionality. Yeah. They killed 1,500 of your people, so you should kill 1,500 of their people, and then you're even Steven. And if you go beyond that, then you're being mean and you're being a genocidist.
Yeah. And Israel is the only state that is ever held to that standard by the entire world.
Yeah, no one else thinks like that. Muslims never thought like that. No one ever thinks like that unless it's Israel. And suddenly, nope, you're just if they kill a bunch of your people, then you get to sort of balance that out and set the balance right again. Then you have to stop. Well, let's talk about why that's stupid and insane.
Because on the other side, there are Muslims and they cry.
So let's see. It's good Constantine's bringing this up here.
And this is
they always do, as long as it involves Israel.
And I haven't understood what that means exactly, because I don't think Israel would want to go into Gaza and butcher innocent civilians in the way that Hamas did. And also, in a war, proportionality is moronic. You're trying to win.
Yeah, of course.
So why are people calling for proportionality?
Because they want Israel to lose. That's all. No, the international community always does this. There's, not much love lost across much of the world for Israel, for the same reasons as I described much of the Muslim world not having much love for Israel. becomes the whipping boy, the scapegoat of the international community. You know, the joke that the UN should have a football team. They would say, well, who would they play? I mean, Israel, obviously.
I missed that when I originally watched it. The UN should have a football team. Who should they play against? Israel. That's funny stuff.
There was a vote at the UN the other day, a few days ago, which simply called for one thing, which was the international condemnation of the Hamas massacres of the 7th of October. It didn't pass.
Wow. The UN couldn't even agree to condemn the October 7th massacre. Couldn't even agree on that. Didn't pass.
Didn't pass. The UN couldn't bring itself to vote to condemn the massacre of the 7th of October. And when it was announced in the hall that it hadn't passed, there was much whooping and clapping. Now, we've seen this before, of course. In 1975, there was a resolution at the United Nations.
Hang on. I don't know if he's coming back to the proportionality one here, but I wanted to make sure we covered the proportionality. So, AP, you familiar with this? That, again, and we heard, they instantly started saying this. This is what came up on Piers Morgan repeatedly and so on. And a lot of what we hear is, hey, they killed 1,500 Israelis, but now 10,000 Gazans have been killed. So it's completely, it's not proportional. It's not proportional. And remember, this got brought up to Ben Shapiro when I think was it Piers Morgan who was saying, well, what is the proportional response? And Ben, I'm not trying to be proportionate here. I think it should be wildly disproportionate if you're responding to terrorists. But yeah, so guys, this is why this is insane, and everyone needs to be prepared to explain why this is stupid and idiotic and insane and inconsistent and is applied to no one in the entire history of warfare. So the claim is, again, Hamas killed 1,500 Jews in that attack. What should Israel do in response? Well, so the argument goes, we agree that Israel can respond, but it has to be proportionate. They killed 1,500 of yours, therefore you can go kill 1,500 of theirs. Even Steven. Then you're even. Then you just move on. Then you go on. You live life after that, right? So it's like when someone launches a horrible attack on you, it's like a balance has been thrown off. And so your goal in responding is to bring balance back. They killed 1,500 of yours, you kill 1,500 of theirs, and then everything is even Steven. That's like
just this enrages me. What he just mentioned. So it was an amendment at the United Nations on condemning the October 7th attack by Hamas, and also condemning the whole method of attacking civilians and taking hostages to then make demands and things like that. And it was rejected. And as far as I read, upon its rejection, the Israeli representative said that this just shows once again that the United Nations has lost any sense of relevance in the world.
Yeah, it sucks. Who wants to listen to them?
But then, I mean, nations actually rejecting this, and then some even celebrating the rejection of this. And we're talking about an incident and an event of terrorists pouring into a country and directly targeting civilians and brutally shooting and killing them and burning them and so on. And this is not being condemned because Israel is on the receiving end, and Muslim terrorists are on the other end. They are the doers. Excuse me, but why in the world should Israel now respect anything at all? Mm-hmm. Why in the world should they now respect anything? If they didn't respect anything at all on the Gazan side, I would understand it at this point.
Yeah. And yeah, same thing with the UN. Like, why? I mean, they don't take them entirely seriously. They still understand that they're still, they still try to interact with the UN and so on. But I mean, notice, how would you not be okay if you guys can't condemn slaughtering men, women, and children in Israel? If you guys can't condemn that, don't talk. Just shut up. Just shut up. No one cares what you say anymore. Shut up. We're done with you, and just walk away. For everyone who doesn't understand the issue of the proportionality and stuff, because notice it appeals to people because it kind of makes sense. They did something, so you do something proportional in return. It's insane and stupid. I'll give you an example. I just looked up Pearl Harbor. The attack killed, so the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. The attack killed 2,403 U.S. personnel, including 68 civilians, and destroyed or damaged. They're targeting the fleet. They're targeting the U.S. fleet to try and cripple the United States before the war even starts, and therefore to demoralize the U.S. so that the U.S. doesn't want to fight, and hey, their ships have been destroyed. So including 68 civilians, and destroyed or damaged 19 U.S. Navy ships, including 8 battleships. So notice you want a proportionate response. Then what the U.S. should have done is said, okay, now we've got to go kill 2,403 Japanese people and blow up 19 of their ships, and then we're even, Steven. Then we're even. Then we're okay. Now notice there's a weird. If you're stupid and not thinking, you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. No, your goal as a military and as a government is not to even the scales out. Your goal is to make sure they can never do that to you again. That's your job as a military, as a government, is to make sure they can never destroy your ships again, that they can never launch that kind of attack again, or that they don't want to do it. And so you're trying to destroy their ability to do that to you again, and their will to do that to you again. That's what you're doing. And what happens? What happens? You fight them until they surrender, and you make conditions where they can't do that to you again. You fight them until they surrender, and you make the rules for them, and you make them agree to the rules that ensure that they are not going to do that to you again. It's the same. Pick a war. Pick a war. That's the goal. If you're fighting Germany, your goal is to go in there, crush Germany so that they can't do all this messed up stuff again. That's your goal. What is Israel's goal? If they get invaded and 1,500 of their people are slaughtered by terrorists, what is their goal? What is their job? What is the goal and job of the main goal and job of the military, of the government? What is your goal right now? Make sure they can never do that again. What are they looking for? Surrender. Surrender. Hand over the people who did this, or we'll hunt them down and kill them, get our hostages back, and make sure that they can never do that again. That's what you're looking for. And for some reason, in this war only, no. All you get to do is even out the scales. You can't crush them to make sure that they don't do that to you again. Absolutely idiotic and insane. Takia. Yeah, so Takia is, Surah 3, verse 28 of the Quran, relevant verse there. But it's not, we've said it before, I've never seen such massive liars as like the Dawa guys and so on. Part of that is, I think that has more to do with them just thinking it's totally acceptable to deceive unbelievers and to even deceive Muslims if it's going to help them be in Islam. And there are other things where they would get that idea from. Taqiyya specifically is a couple of situations. If you're going to be persecuted for being a Muslim or for being from some particular sect of Islam, then you can say you're not a Muslim, or you're not from that sect of Islam. You're allowed to lie in order to protect your life and so on. So that's one sort of situation. But Surah 328 is about not being friendly towards non-Muslims. And it says, unless you fear a danger from them. So there are these other situations that are also taqiyya that are, if you would be in danger by telling people what your real goal and your real agenda is, then lie to them about it, right? Because so if you're in an area and hey, it's us versus them, what should we do here? Well, if you're safe to say, hey, we can't stand you, we don't want to be friends with you, we don't like you, you stay over there, you're non-Muslims. If you can get away with that, then yeah. If it's in the best interest of the Muslim community for you to pretend to be friendly, then you can pretend to be friendly. Yeah. And Sunnis misrepresent this and say this is just a Shia doctrine. because it was much more relevant for Shias along the way, because they've typically been in a minority. And so they've had to use this in order to protect themselves from Sunnis for many centuries. But it's clear. I mean, that passage, Surah 3, verse 20, that's the Quran. Ibn Kathir's commentary on it, awesome. And he says, he quotes one of Muhammad's companions who says, Taqiyya is there till the day of resurrection. You'll still be using Taqiyya. You'll still be deceiving people until the day of resurrection. And then you had, he also quotes Muhammad's companion Abu Darda, who says that we smile in the faces of some people, although our hearts curse them. So
beautiful.
So you want to destroy them, but you're not in a position. So we smile at you.
That's beautiful.
You're our friends. And so it's basically the same thing that's going on with anti-Israel Muslims uniting with college students, or with leftists, or with LGBTQ, any of these groups that they're uniting with on various issues. It's all deception. They're deceiving them about their agenda. And that's entirely justified. All right.
When it was announced in the hall that it hadn't passed, there was much whooping and clapping.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've seen this before, of course. In 1975, there was a resolution at the United Nations in New York that Zionism is racism. One of those proposing this motion was Idi Amin. Fine, upstanding gentleman.
A good guy.
Yeah.
And again,
He's being sarcastic.
people watching who don't know who Idi Amin is, educate yourself. And the evening that the vote was put to the UN, a drinks reception was held at the United Nations for those voting that Zionism was racism. And who was hosting the drinks party? Kurt Waldheim. Again, people can look him up. Kurt Waldheim is the former Chancellor of Austria. He was a member of an SS battalion in World War II.
This guy's handing out drinks
So,
after a UN vote.
the United Nations has been here before, plenty of times. The United Nations can never bring itself to condemn anything unless it involves Israel. And that is a pathology of the United Nations. But we have seen all of this before, many, many times, too many times to count.
Oh, so yeah, this is the last part here. The interview goes on longer, and there's a link to the rest of it. And I mean, there's a link to the full thing in the description box. But now he's going into the part I mentioned where it doesn't matter what Jews do, people will hate them no matter what they do. They go up, they'll hate them for going up. They go down, they'll hate them for going down. They go left, they'll hate them for going left. They go right, they'll hate them for going right. He breaks this down pretty well here.
Ever since the foundation of the state. And that comes to one of the simple problems of, and I'm sorry, but we have to bring it up, anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
One of the simple problems about anti-Semitism is, as everybody who knows about it knows, is that it's a shape-shifting virus. At one point in the history of Europe, in the history of our own country, the Jews were hated because they were poor, and then they were hated because they were rich. They were hated for not integrating, and then they were hated for integrating.
Yeah.
In the era where you could hate people for their religion, they were hated for their religion. Mm-hmm. Then when that became impossible in Europe, you couldn't hate people for their religion, they were hated for their race. Then at a particular point in Europe, we discovered we couldn't hate people for their race anymore. So what did we hate people for if they were Jewish? We hated them for being stateless. Then the Jewish people got a state, and they were hated for having a state. Now, you cannot tell me in this situation that there's a coincidence here. It is not a coincidence that every way you do it, it ends up like that.
Yeah, and so again, it keeps going, but yeah, brilliant.
Douglas Murray he has a brilliant way to put things into words that
He's got a way with words.
Yeah, that are on your mind, but that you might struggle with. He put it into the perfect words. That's basically what it is.
Peach Buns here says, if only Jordan Peterson knew half of what Murray knows. Yeah, wouldn't Jordan Peterson be an incredibly important voice on this issue if he would actually read a couple books on it and listen to some people who know what they're talking about on this issue and start saying relevant things? Like, he's always like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about this stuff. It's like, dude, you read like 75,000 books a year. Why can't you read a couple books on this and actually contribute on this particular issue?
It's so weird to me that he seems remarkably ignorant on this whole stuff when he should be talking about it, or when he talks about it, he should be informed on this stuff. But I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I understand people not being informed. I don't understand really smart people who are commenting on this and saying things like, get a pen pal and stuff. Like, what? Why wouldn't you get it? It's not a ton of work, especially given your brain power to figure this stuff out. Why are you not doing it? Genocide is not just about numbers. Oh, they're quoting that other comment I mentioned. Genocide is not just about numbers. It's about intentions. Too bad either. If one is going to make that claim, they must admit Muslims are genocidal. So yeah, if it's just about intentions, then what are the intentions with Israel? Genocide, right? So notice you could say the Palestinians are committing genocide against Israel. You say, what? They're not killing all of it. Yeah. Well, if it's about their intentions, that's their intentions. So it's genocide, right? And you could say that all of the college student protesters and so on, if it's about their intentions, then if they're saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, their intentions are genocidal.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. That is correct.
Alhamdulillah.
But what if the
plus both of the authorities, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, both explicitly said in one way or another that they intend to exterminate the Jews in the end. So it's pretty clear. If you want to really go for that, there you have it.
There's something that's supposed to happen here. Hamas is supposed to surrender.
Yeah.
You're losing. You can't win. You're supposed to surrender. That's what happens. That's what's supposed to happen here. Instead, the entire rest of the world props them up to kind of keep them going and so on, so that they don't surrender, so that you can never deal with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Preshi Presh says, D. Wood, what is a Christian view of Judaism? Do you believe Judaism was canceled by Jesus, or it no longer needs to exist and simply become Christian? So why did God start Judaism only to cancel it later? Well, you have, in the Bible, you have a series of covenants. You have God's covenant with Noah and so on. You have a covenant with Abraham. You have a covenant with the children of Israel. And then Moses is there. Then you're also told in the Old Testament that a new covenant is coming. It often gets overlooked when the Apostle Paul and the apostles are going out preaching that Jesus is Lord. They don't think they're starting another religion, right? This is the Messiah. This is the Messiah of our religion. Our religion teaches this is the Messiah. So Messianic Jews, people like Michael Brown and so on, they don't believe they have some different religion from the one that was taught by the prophets and so on. They believe that Jesus is the fulfillment. And so they would tend to look at Jews as just they haven't accepted the Messiah yet. They've got some false beliefs about the Messiah and so on. So yeah, it's not something that's like Judaism and then canceling it or something. It's according to Christianity, Jesus is the fulfillment of these things. I've said for years that they should have some sort of program like when you're dealing with terrorists and so on. You catch a terrorist or something, you're going to lock them up. My goodness, what do you have against exposing that guy to all the reasons he should not take Islam seriously? Like, what is your problem? Oh, they'll be Islamophobic. Yeah. This guy's literally he believes that his religion orders him to kill people. You think it's wrong and immoral to tell him not to follow his religion?
Of course.
Bunch of morons, man. Bunch of morons. Sid Dave says, David Wood, do you think that Muslims can really ever change and be forced to secularize? It seems like a lost cause, but may be appeal to their humanity. No, Muslims can secularize. Muslims can change. Muslims can have different views and so on. The problem is, just personality-wise, notice what is a Muslim? As a Muslim who, it's supposed to be someone who submits to Islam. So there will always be this force within the community saying, guys, look, we're all being secular here, but look what our prophet said. And those people just have an impact, right? These are the Dawah guys. Hey guys, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? We have a mission from Allah. And so you could have tons and tons and tons of perfectly nice Muslims. You could have tons of Muslim friends and so on. You can have Muslims that you can get along with. There's always going to be issues that arise because the religion calls for the violent subjugation of the entire world. And I don't know how you get an entire population that would not take their sources seriously on these issues.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So notice there are various problems here that are going on that have to do with generally ignorance, right? Young people today, ignorant. Even the people who are aligning with Dawa guys on various issues, it's usually because of ignorance. They do not understand what the final goals of the Dawa guys are for their populations and so on. So one, you got this problem of ignorance, but the other issue is, of course, Islam. Got to deal with Islam. All right, so again, we've got to pay attention to what Islam teaches. And guys, these situations that happen in the world, very, very tragic frequently. But if the problem is Islam, then focus on dealing with the problem and using these opportunities to expose the most obvious false prophet in history. And so we can always announce,
ain't gonna follow no child molester, sex offender, prophet pretender. Ain't gonna follow no child molester.
Islam's not for me. Islam's not for me.
Islam's not